ready to add some color to our deep dives. Let's jump into the world of enameling. We're talking about transforming metal with powdered glass, using heat to make this beautiful glossy finish.
It really is fascinating. It's this incredible blend of art and technical skill. You need that creative eye, but also a deep understanding of the materials and the process.
And that's where acing that interview comes in, right?
Mm.
So let's say you're face-to-face with a potential employer, and they ask, what inspired you to become an enameler? Where do you even begin with that?
It's all about showing genuine passion, you know? This isn't about listing off techniques, you know. It's about what draws you to this art form. Was it a piece that just took your breath away? Or maybe the history and the tradition behind it? Let that excitement shine through.
That's where RoleCatcher's AI can be a huge help. They analyze your answers and give you feedback, suggesting ways to make them stronger.
It's like having a coach right there with you. Let's say your answer is all about the technical side and doesn't really touch on your artistic drive. RoleCatcher might suggest adding in a personal touch, like a childhood memory of being mesmerized by an enamel piece.
Okay, that makes sense. So you've nailed the passion question, but then they hit you with, what experience do you have in enameling?
Time to get specific. Don't just rattle off a list of techniques. RoleCatcher really emphasizes showing your skills in action. So talk about projects where you use those techniques, what you learned, even challenges you overcame.
So instead of saying, I'm familiar with cloisonne, you might say.
Exactly. You could say something like, in this recent project where I recreated a Byzantine-era brooch, I used cloisonne to get that intricate detail on the wings. Keeping those fine lines was tough, but I learned a valuable technique to stabilize the wires during firing.
Now that paints a much clearer picture of your skills and what makes you stand out.
Right, and that's the goal. You want to be memorable.
Now, let's say the interviewer wants to dig a little deeper into how you work and asks, how do you ensure the quality of your work?
It's tempting to just say, I'm a perfectionist and move on, right?
Right. But they want more than just a simple answer. This is your chance to show off your meticulous approach. RoleCatcher suggests getting specific about the quality checks you do throughout the entire enameling process. Do you meticulously clean the metal beforehand? Have a system for inspecting your work after applying the enamel, after firing, and so on.
It's all about those little details that show you're not just creating something, but you're crafting it with care.
Exactly. You could mention, I calibrate my kiln regularly to make sure I'm getting consistent firing temperatures, which is key for getting that perfect color and finish. That shows you understand the technical side and how it impacts the quality of your work. So we've talked about passion, experience, and quality. But what about those curveball questions interviewers love to throw? Like, have you ever encountered challenges while enameling? Everyone has them, but how do you talk about them without sounding like you're making excuses?
You're right. Everyone faces challenges. It's part of the creative process. The key is to present them as learning experiences, and RoleCatcher's Guide highlights this really well. Pick a specific challenge you faced, explain how you dealt with it, the steps you took, and what you learned.
So it's about turning a potential negative into a positive by highlighting your problem-solving skills.
Exactly. Imagine you had a piece where the enamel chipped after firing, unexpectedly. Instead of saying, oh, I messed up, you could say, I had a situation where the enamel chipped. After doing some research and talking to a mentor, I realized I hadn't counter-enameled the piece properly to handle the stress between the metal and the enamel. Since then, I always double-check for proper counter-enameling, especially on those more delicate pieces.
That not only shows your problem-solving skills,
Yeah.
but also your dedication to constantly learning and improving your craft. You found a gap in your knowledge and actively worked to fill it.
And that's something any employer would appreciate. Now let's transition from challenges to the constantly evolving world of enameling. It's not just some stuck-in-the-past art. You've got new techniques and materials popping up, even new styles emerging all the time.
Which brings us to another classic interview question. How do you stay up to date with new enameling techniques and trends? It's like they want to make sure you're not using outdated methods from a decade ago.
It's all about showing them you're dedicated to growth and keeping your skills sharp. RoleCatcher suggests being specific about what you do to stay current. Do you attend workshops or conferences? Maybe you subscribe to industry magazines or follow influential enamellers online.
Oh, and those online tutorials. I've definitely lost track of time on YouTube learning how to do all sorts of things, enameling included.
Exactly. Sharing those specific examples shows you're genuinely invested in learning and expanding your skill set. You could say something like, I recently went to this workshop on experimental enameling techniques using laser etching, and it totally changed how I think about surface design.
Okay, so you've nailed the questions about experience, problem solving, and staying up to date. But then the interviewer throws a real curveball. Have you ever worked with custom enamel colors or designs?
Ah, this is your chance to shine. This is where you show them you can not only handle the technical side of enameling, but also take a client's vision and turn it into a real, tangible piece of art.
So it's not just
That's a great point. This is where you showcase your problem-solving skills, but in a client-focused way. You could say, I had a client who really wanted this vibrant neon effect, but it was tricky to achieve with traditional enamels. So I suggested we incorporate dichroic glass elements, which gave a similar eye-catching look while still working within the enameling process.
that shows you're not afraid to get creative and find solutions that make both the client and you happy. Now, let's shift gears a bit to a question that really gets at the heart of being an enameler. How do you balance creativity with practicality when enameling?
This question is all about finding that balance between your artistic vision and the reality of what you can do with the materials and techniques.
It's like wanting to sculpt this super delicate flower out of marble. You need that artistic vision, but you also need the technical skill to actually make it happen.
Exactly. Be ready to share an example of a time when you had to make a design choice based on both your artistic instincts and the limitations of the project.
For example, maybe you had this really intricate, multi-layered design in mind, but then realized it just wouldn't be possible with the type of metal or how the piece was going to be used.
Exactly. Share how you weighed your options, maybe consulted some resources, or even did some experimenting to find a solution that honored both your creative side and the practical constraints of the project.
Now, for those who dream big, RoleCatcher includes this question about large-scale work. Have you ever worked on a large-scale enameling project? What if you haven't tackled a huge project like that yet? Could you still highlight relevant skill?
Absolutely. Even if you haven't created a massive enamel mural or anything, you can still talk about experiences that show off your organizational skills, problem-solving abilities, and project management experience.
So maybe you were in charge of a group project for an exhibition, managed a complicated commission with multiple parts, or even just took on a personal project that required careful planning and execution.
Exactly. It's all about proving you can handle complex tasks, manage your time well, and maintain that high standard of craftsmanship even when you're working on a larger scale.
And this ties back into RoleCatcher's AI features.
Yeah.
It can make sure your answers fit specific job roles, so what you say really resonates with what employers want to hear.
Absolutely. RoleCatcher's AI looks at your answers and gives feedback tailored to the job description. So if you're going for a job that involves those large-scale installations, it might suggest you focus on projects that show you can work with different materials or handle those logistical challenges.
It's like having a personal career coach who understands both your skills and what the job market wants. And speaking of what the job market wants, let's not forget about safety.
Absolutely. Working with heat, chemicals, and potentially dangerous materials means you have to show you're serious about safety.
So when they ask, how do you ensure the safety of yourself and others while enameling, it's not enough to just say, I'm careful, right? What are some specific safety protocols you can talk about?
It's about proving, the risks involved and the steps you take to stay safe. Do you wear the right personal protective gear like a respirator, gloves, and eye protection? What about ventilation in your workspace?
Those are the basics. But what about going above and beyond? What are some extra steps you take to make your work environment really safe?
You could mention that you've taken a first aid course specifically for art studio hazards, or maybe you have a dedicated fire extinguisher and know how to use it. You could even talk about how you store and dispose of chemicals responsibly to protect the environment.
Right. It's all about being proactive and informed about safety. You want to make sure not only you are safe, but anyone in your studio or workshop is safe too. And I was really impressed by RoleCatcher's module on studio safety. It was surprisingly thorough. They even covered stuff like ventilation systems and ergonomic workspaces.
They really have thought of everything. Now, as we start to wrap up our enameling deep dive, I want to go back to something we've talked about throughout this episode: continuous learning.
It's not just about mastering what you already know. It's about being open to new ideas, trying different approaches, and always looking for ways to improve your craft.
And that's something that shows not just in your enamel work itself, but in how you present yourself in an interview.
So before we move on to our final thoughts, let's take a moment to appreciate all the hard work, the artistry, and the passion that goes into every single piece of enamel art.
It's a craft that's been around for centuries, and with more and more people interested in handmade, artisanal pieces, the future for skilled enamelers is looking bright.
We'll be right back to wrap up this episode of The Deep Dive, so stick around. And we're back for the final glaze on our enameling deep dive.
It's been great, hasn't it?
It really has. Getting ready for this chat really opened my eyes to just how much skill and artistry goes into creating those vibrant enamel finishes.
It truly is a beautiful blend of artistic vision and technical mastery. And as we've been talking about, getting that across in an interview is so important for anyone wanting to become an enameler.
And speaking of nailing that interview, we've covered a lot of RoleCatcher's insights on how to prepare. But we can't forget their secret weapon, RoleCatcher's AI.
Oh, absolutely. This is where their platform goes beyond just giving you info. It actually helps you refine your answers and make them as strong as they can be.
So for anyone who hasn't experienced this whole AI-powered interview prep thing, how does it work?
Imagine having a personal coach who analyzes every word you say, finds areas where you can improve, and even suggests phrases to make your responses really stand out. That's what RoleCatcher's AI does.
Okay, that sounds amazing, but paint me a picture. How does it actually work in real life?
Let's say you're answering the question, tell me about a time you faced a challenge while enameling. You type your answer into RoleCatcher, and their AI gets to work analyzing it. It looks for things like clarity, how concise your answer is, whether it's relevant to the job description, even the kind of action verbs you're using.
Like having an editor who's also an expert in enameling, keeping an eye on everything.
Exactly. It might point out if your answer is a bit long, or if you need more specific examples to support what you're saying. It might even suggest different ways to phrase things to make them sound more confident and impactful.
So it goes beyond just right or wrong answers. It's about showcasing your experience and skills in a way that really grabs their attention.
Exactly. And what's really cool is that it's always learning. RoleCatcher's AI is constantly being updated with new data and insights about the industry, so you know you're getting the most up-to-date feedback possible.
It's like a secret weapon to help you stand out and land your dream job.
Absolutely. And as we put a pin in this enameling deep dive, I want to emphasize that no matter where you are in your journey, whether you're just starting or you're a total pro, it's all about continuous learning, trying new things, and growing.
It's about embracing those challenges, always refining your techniques and pushing the boundaries of what you can create with this amazing art form.
And remember, RoleCatcher is there with you every step of the way, giving you the resources, the guidance, and even that extra AI boost to help you make your mark on the world of enameling.
From understanding all the technical details to absolutely rock in that job interview, they've got your back.
So go out there and create. The world needs more of your vibrant, one-of-a-kind enamel art.
And listeners, we want to hear from you. If you could enamel anything, what would it be? A piece of jewelry? A decorative plate? Maybe a sculpture? Tell us about it on social media. And don't forget to check out RoleCatcher to start your own enameling adventure. Until next time, happy enameling.